Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. Balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
My name's Rebecca Kersch. I'm the CEO and founder of a fintech startup called TANGapp, TANGapp. The TANG stands for Transact and Go, but together it's also like TANGapp, which is, similar to the word receive in Tagalog.
a new app is allowing migrant workers in the US to send money home to their Filipino relatives at a lower cost. It was founded by a Filipina Dutch Harvard Business School graduate who drew inspiration from her own family.
I started TANGapp in 2020, and it's an international peer-to-peer mobile payment app. So kind of, in a way, an international Venmo if you're familiar in the US with the local e-wallet, or an international GCash. And it allows Filipinos based in the US to send money home on TANGapp as little as $5, and then eventually the receivers will be able to use the app for more.
This week, Rebecca's entire team of 12 traveled to the Philippines to meet each other in person for the first time. Scattered across different cities and countries, they'd been working remotely all this time. What makes TANGapp different from all the other remittance services out there?
So normally some of the predominant players, and especially with migrant workers that we know about, are OFWs. For companies like Western Union or MoneyGram, like the fees can go up to as high as 8%. That's about 1/12. So it means in a year of living and working abroad, you're working one whole month just to pay for those fees. So that's obviously quite high. There are other companies that are obviously out there doing a little bit better. At TANGapp, we charge 3%.
Saving on fees is big, but that's not all.
Where we differentiate is you can send as little as $5, so really low amounts, or what we call microtransactions. And on top of that, we don't charge anything on our exchange rate. We offer the best mid-market exchange rate in the app, and it updates live, which is also a place where sometimes other players will kind of hide their fees because it's hard to tell when you don't generally calculate the exchange rate in detail. So that's something we also find very important, because our social mission is to help improve the lives of migrant workers and their receiving relatives who often are unbanked. So our big focus is to make sure we're fully transparent on all the fees and the payment structure on our app.
TANGapp has quite the momentum going for it. Their investors include Katrina Razon, daughter of ports tycoon Enrique Razon, and Goodwater Capital, a leading tech venture capital firm based in California.
Last year, since we launched the remittances product on our app, we've grown an average of over 35% month on month, and that's all without paid ads. So seeing huge organic traction and growth, which is phenomenal, and having thousands of users, and that just multiplies every month. We see this vision being much bigger than the Philippines, right? To me, the Philippines is very near and dear to my heart. As a Filipina, happen to be a Harvard graduate with this amazing team behind me, we've sort of cracked the code on really how we know we can solve this issue of the migrant workers paying too many exorbitant fees, and then their unbanked relatives not necessarily improving in household economics.
TANGapp requires senders to use their bank accounts, but anyone with the app and any major e-wallet in the Philippines can receive the money. And as Rebecca mentioned, the same 3% transaction fee is applied, regardless of the amount sent. We're gonna pause for a quick break, but when we return, we'll get into the personal story that inspired Rebecca to build the app.
Teka, before we continue, singit lang ako. Hi, I'm Trisha Aquino, Chief Content Officer at Puma Podcast and producer of our show Conservative Ako with sex and relationships therapist, Doc Rica Cruz. It's the month of love. How are you celebrating? Is it by learning to love your partner more?
Ipakita mo sa kanya kung saan ka ba nasasarapan, kung ano ba yung mga pwede niyang gawin sa'yo. You take the lead. Kahit na nakakahiya, gawin mo yun para sa sarili mo.
Or focusing on loving yourself.
Napakalaga para sa ating lahat to know how we relate sa katawan natin. Anong klaseng respeto ang kailangan ng katawan? Anong klaseng pagtanggap sa mga ninanais nito at sa kasayahan nito ang dapat?
Doc Rica Cruz and her guest experts are here to improve your relationships, whether it be with your lover or with yourself. Listen to Season 3 of Conservative Ako, our podcast on sex and female pleasure, wherever you get your podcasts.
Another way Rebecca and her team were hoping to empower OFWs and their families was through financial literacy. She says that's starting to happen already.
The behavior used to be that, you send $500 from a relative to, let's say, her brother in the Philippines, and then 2 weeks later, they need a little bit more, and it's just very hard to control or understand where all the funds are going to. And because with Tang, it doesn't cost you any more to send less, we're seeing that people will now say, okay, but the sender will ask, what do you need it for? And the brother in the Philippines or so, for example, will say, okay, so I need $150 for our mother's medicine this week. I need $175 for our son's tuition. And so what we see now is the US sender will say, okay, I will send you $150 today for mom's medicine. That should arrive within minutes on TANGapp. And then next week, when tuition is due on Friday, I'll send you the money on Wednesday. And so it's almost creating this budgeting and planning system because of them being able to send smaller amounts.
I asked Rebecca if she was planning to provide any other services on TANGapp. Aside from remittances, it currently allows users to send prepaid load. It's a service they rolled out in the early days of the pandemic after learning that OFWs were having a hard time contacting their families back home. At the time, stringent lockdowns here were preventing people from even going to their local sari-sari stores to top up their phone plans. TANGapp allows users to send prepaid load even to people who don't have the app on their phones. She says they got thousands of downloads in one day, and this was before they had even launched their main remittance service.
For now, the feedback, for instance, coming from the senders, which is also a very different perspective where, for instance, they've also told us that it would be great if I could just send a gift card instead of just cash, just because it's my inanak's birthday and I just want to send $30 for Jollibee and I just want him to get the Jollibee QR code or gift card on his phone. So, for instance, that's something we're thinking about. We're definitely thinking about expanding features on the app locally in the Philippines, but looking at it more from a perspective of being very conscientious and making sure the feedback and the demand is there before we build it.
In 2021, overseas Filipino workers sent home a record-breaking $34.88 billion in cash remittances. But TANGapp says most relatives of OFWs still rely on inconvenient and costly cash pickups. It was actually Rebecca's aunt who inspired her to come up with a better solution.
My tita baby, she was a migrant worker, so she lived and worked outside the Philippines her whole life. She supported a lot of her loved ones back in the Philippines over decades, and I really saw this example where she paid 8% every time she sent money home. And so growing up with that really fed into me wanting to, one, build a solution to help solve this problem for people like my tita baby, but also her relatives who are unbanked, and help them improve in household economics, but do it in a way where, it's a business that has good values and always make sure that improving lives is our North Star and nothing else.
The United Nations says that 1 in 9 people globally are supported by funds sent home by migrant workers. In fact, it's a UN Sustainable Development Goal to bring down remittance fees to 3%, the same rate that TANGapp charges. That's because UN data shows that remittances are key to helping millions out of poverty. Half of all remittances go straight to rural areas, where most of the world's poorest live.
My end goal vision is to honestly help tens of millions of migrant workers by having them have access to TANGapp, but also there's 1.5 billion people who are unbanked in the world. And I think that when you look at the world from when we shifted from home landline phones to mobile phones, emerging markets like the Philippines went straight to mobile phones. I still actually find it a very fascinating trend. We all just kind of take it for granted, but it is, when you think about it, that's a huge leap that they skipped out on an entire sector, right? And telcos really were forced to adapt. And what I think the case is with banking is that we see the same opportunity. I think countries where folks are unbanked is that they all have smartphones, or most of them do today. So I don't think they need a brick and mortar checking account. I think they can go straight to digital payments.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was produced by Kat Ventura and edited by Nina Toralba. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami doon. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.